The goal of every NBA franchise is to win a championship, ideally multiple championships, assembling a team that can be set up for success for years to come and be competing for a title season after season. Some do it well, others not so much. But while every team goes through their various stages of rebuilding, development, or contending and looking to win now, some teams, while they may not be in contention now, are certainly setting themselves up for a bright competitive future. But then you have the other franchises who have little to nothing going for them in the near or distant future, a bleak outlook based on their current roster construction and their average age, their draft capital they have at their disposal, as well as the value of their current player assets on the trade market. And so in this video, I thought we would take a look at some of the teams with the bleakest future in the NBA, and I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on it as well. As always, if you're new to the channel and you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe to help the channel grow, and in return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, the first thing we need to do is define what a quote-unquote bright or bleak future looks like when it comes to the current state of an NBA franchise. For me, there are really three main factors when assessing this point. One, your current young core, your young talent, generally players who are under the age of 25, and what kind of potential they have for the future and how they have been progressing as players with each passing season. Two, a team's current star players, if they have any, and how they have been performing more recently, their current age, and whether they still have more prime years left ahead of them, or they're at a stage where they could be declining very soon. And then finally, your current draft capital, the number of draft picks you have at your disposal, whether it's your own picks or other teams' picks that you've acquired in a trade. And the number of picks is important not only because you can use them to draft future prospects to build upon for the future, but also using said picks in future trade deals. And so knowing all of this, there are 5 teams I'm focusing on when I look at their future, and I see a lot of losing seasons for years to come. And the team we have to start with that I would argue has the worst future in the entire league is the LA Clippers. Look, the Clippers will still be a decent team this upcoming season, although losing Paul George is going to set them back quite a bit in the standings. And while they still have what most people would still consider to be stars in the league in Kawhi Leonard and James Harden, both of those guys are not the same players they used to be. Kawhi has always had issues with staying healthy. He's on the wrong side of 30, having just turned 33. James Harden, while still a very productive player, he's not the James Harden from his mid-20s that could score at will and generate offense better than anyone in the NBA. He's now 35, so you got your 2 best players in their mid-30s. They're the oldest team in the league by average age. And then when talking about young talent for the Clippers, there really isn't much to be excited about. For some reason, they keep signing these guys around the league that no one wants because of off-court issues in Kevin Porter Jr., Josh Primo, Kai Jones. They've got Bones Highland, who's only 23, but he's not a piece that you build around for the future. And then what's worse for the Clippers is they have such little draft capital to work with. Like, even if the Clippers wanted to try and make a push to upgrade talent and throw out some picks to get a win-now type player, they only have 1 first-round pick they can trade in either 2030 or 2031, since you can't trade consecutive first-round picks in the NBA due to the Stepien rule. And that's it. They do have first-round picks in 25, 27, 29, but they're all pick swaps, so they're not able to trade any of those picks, and the pick swaps are with the Thunder and the Sixers, which likely means they're going to get the worst end of the stick in those deals when the Thunder just finished first in the West last season, and they're going to probably have a better record than the Clippers will, and they're going to exercise their right to swap picks for a more favorable selection. The Clippers also have 0 second-round picks to work with. They have 1 second-round pick in 2031, but it's a pick swap, so they're not able to trade that. So aging stars, 0 young talent that you can build with for the future, and 2 first-round picks and 1 second-round pick far out into the future. Yes, the Clippers could just blow it up and trade Kawhi Leonard and James Harden to get some assets in return, and that would get some value for those guys, but it's not going to be to the level of return a player like Kevin Durant fetched from the Nets when they moved him on, or even the Rudy Gobert trade to the Timberwolves. It's just not happening. Another team with one of the bleakest futures in the NBA has to be the Milwaukee Bucks. Yes, the Bucks have a top 5, you could even argue a top 3 player in the league. That alone makes their future not as much in doubt, but the Bucks have really committed to this very old core of players in Damian Lillard, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez around Giannis. And since trading for Dame, early returns have not been good. I know they had their fair share of injuries in the playoffs, which is why you saw them get bounced in the first round, but the Bucks are a slow, poor defensive team that I can't honestly say is going to get better with their aging core. Now, the positives for the Bucks is they have Giannis, who is still a superstar in this league in the peak of his prime. Regardless of the rest of the roster, he's a player you can still build around as a franchise player. And if you really wanted to pivot and go in a different direction, where Giannis had indicated that he wanted out, you could get a massive haul for him on the trade market. So unlike the Clippers, the Bucks have that going for them. And then for Damian Lillard, still a star, still playing at a high level, although I wouldn't say he's quite at the level of his Portland days, but still a top 15 player in the league. The downside for a player like Dame is, one, his age. He's 34, so you're not going to have that many more peak years of him. And two, he's not going to garner that much value in a trade because of his age and his contract, where he's still making max money for the next 3 seasons. Teams are going to be wary of taking on a deal like that for an aging star under the new CBA. But the biggest issue for the Bucks, and why we have to classify their future being so bleak, is their future draft assets. They currently only have 1 first and 1 second round pick in 2031 that they have control over, but they have 0 first round picks they can actually trade. Given their pick in 2030, Portland holds the right to swap with. All of their future picks, first and second round picks, have been traded away. They will get a first round pick in 26, 28, and 30, but it's subject to it being swapped with Portland or New Orleans, but that's it. They are straight up bereft of draft capital. And then when you look at their young players, they've got Marjon Beauchamp, who has shown flashes in the limited role he's had, Andre Jackson, Chris Livingston, their recent draft picks, AJ Johnson, who they selected 23rd overall, their last first round pick they can use for a while. I mean, some of these guys have shown some potential, but that potential is never going to be realized when this team is going to be focusing on winning now for the foreseeable future. For a team that has already fallen behind that of Boston, and some would even say of the Knicks and the Sixers. Next on the list, gotta talk about the Phoenix Suns. I would say the only advantage the Suns have over these other 2 teams is, one, they still have Kevin Durant, who despite his age is still playing at a very high level, and then Devin Booker, who is in the peak of his prime, younger than Giannis, and of course Kawhi and James Harden as well. Bradley Beal is probably a negative asset at this point with his max contract and at his age, but he's still productive enough of a player when he's healthy, and that core makes the Suns competitive enough to be a contending team for a title for at least the next year or 2. But beyond that, what else do they really have going for them? They've traded away most of their promising young players to get to this current core. The only player they have under 25 who is on a 2-way contract is their recent draft pick in Ryan Dunn, who I'm sure they'll likely trade by the deadline to try and get another win now type piece. They're right up there with the Clippers in having one of the oldest teams in the league. And then, of course, the Suns in bringing together this core and making that all-in trade for Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, even in trading for Yusuf Nurkic and Grayson Allen as well, they only have 1 first-round pick to work with in 2031 and 1 first-round pick in 2026, but it's a pick swap that they do not have control over, and 3 second-round picks in 26 and 2 in 2031, picks far out into the future. Nothing to work with in building on this current core, both in using those picks to actually package up in a deal or using the selections to add young talent to the roster, something they are completely without at the time of this recording. But what about a team like the Lakers? Both LeBron and Anthony Davis are still playing at a high level, and it's insane what LeBron has been able to do and still playing like a superstar at the age of 39. But eventually, and I know we've been saying this for years now, but eventually LeBron will taper off, which he already has in some regards, especially when it comes to his defense. But after LeBron finally retires, which will be, one would think anyway, to be more in the near future, then what's next for the Lakers? Anthony Davis isn't getting any younger. He'll be turning 32 in this upcoming season. Last year, he had one of his best seasons and stayed healthy throughout it, but is he going to be able to maintain that going forward into his mid-30s when the Lakers are paying him max money? I don't see them keeping around D'Angelo Russell beyond this season when his contract expires. Austin Reeves has been great for them, but even Reeves isn't the type of player you build a team around for the future. Besides, it's not like he's that young in NBA terms. Their young talent when looking at guys under 25 isn't anything to write home about. Guys like Jackson Hayes, Cam Reddish, JHS, Max Christie. He's probably their most promising young player, if we're being honest. They drafted Dalton Knecht with their first round pick from this past draft, who was the oldest player in the 2024 draft class at age 23. And then Bronny James, who, let's be real, is not an NBA level player and isn't going to be something that moves the needle for them both for now and for the future. And then when looking at their draft picks, they're in much better shape than the teams that I just mentioned. They have their first round picks in 26, 28, 29, 30, and 31, and 5 second round picks. So I almost tend to lean in not putting the Lakers as a team with one of the bleakest futures in the league because they've at least been able to maintain their draft capital. But if I was a betting man, I would say the Lakers are probably going to trade the bulk of those picks to try and make an all-in move to compete for one last championship for LeBron James, which is going to set them back years for something that isn't going to happen. The Western Conference is just too good. So many teams have passed them up with their talent level. And with the Lakers cap sheet, their roster construction, I don't see a world where they can make meaningful upgrades to the team that would put them over the top. The only other team I would put on this list, even though they are currently rebuilding and have a lot of young players and a ton of draft picks to work with, is the Washington Wizards. And I'm mainly including them because I just don't really trust that they're going to be able to execute on this current rebuild and make competent decisions. Not only that, they still have the contracts of Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma to deal with that don't fit their long-term plans. Outside of landing Cooper Flagg or a generational talent of some kind, which could happen given they're going to be pretty bad in this upcoming season, but they have a lot of young players, they have a ton of draft picks, so this wouldn't typically be a team that one would consider to have a bleak future, but it's the Wizards. As they currently stand and looking at their history, I don't have confidence that they're going to be able to build a contending team in the future. Those are the teams I believe have the bleakest future in the NBA, but I would love to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.